Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Grief Life After Loss. My name is Lindsay, and if this is your first time visiting my channel, welcome. If you are a returning follower, thank you for coming back and tuning in. Today we are going to be continuing the conversation around secondary losses. We've been speaking about the loss of identity and how that could affect us after we experience the death of a loved one. We've also spoken about the loss of faith. And today we are going to be talking about the loss of relationships, because oftentimes it is not until we experience the death of a loved one and see how that particular event, that loss, dramatically changes our lives, not just ourselves, but also those around us, right? So there are several areas of our lives that can be impacted as a result of the death, as a result of what our experience looks like, of what our grief looks like, right? Because what I tell you guys, oftentimes people are not comfortable with the unpleasant emotions, and not everyone's grief looks the same, not everyone's intensity feels the same, right? So perhaps some people may experience feelings of sadness, depression, anger, guilt, and so forth for a limited amount of time, or perhaps not at such a high intensity where they're still able to kind of go about their days, go about their lives, and continue trying to readjust to the new norm. Other people perhaps have a little bit more difficult time in readjusting to the new norm, right? Because that's another loss of norm as you knew it before that person passed away. As it relates to our relationships, anytime you throw something like death in the mix, it is bound to change your relationships with people, whether it's your partners, whether it's your family members, whether it's your friends, whether it's your colleagues, everyone that pretty much makes up your life as far as relationships and who you connect with. They may react differently to perhaps what now seems to be your life after the death, right? So it's very depending on what your grief experience is like. So today we're going to focus on people that perhaps have a little bit of a harder time in reconnecting with those around them while they're grieving, right? Because grief can oftentimes bring up a lot of overwhelming emotions that tend to lead us to want to isolate ourselves, that also tend to overwhelm us to the point where any social activity may just seem too much. Obviously, if you're a person that is withdrawing in your grief experience, that is truly suffering, that is in distress, it may be difficult for those around that person to perhaps continue with the relationship in the manner that they had prior to the death, if that makes sense, right? So people usually will feel bad for you. Obviously, they don't want to experience this level of distress. Sometimes people may try to reach out, may try to comfort you, may try to be of a support system. However, people do tend to have a time limit, and lucky are those that remain supportive unconditionally through thick and thin, but not everyone has that capacity, and that is okay, because again, we're not perfect, we're human beings, and we know ourselves enough to know what we can and cannot tolerate, or where we can support someone and where we can't, right? So not everyone is going to be able to support you through your grief, and that's something that it's sad sometimes, because it's usually sometimes the people that you expect to feel and be the most supported by that tend to take a step back. This is not to put the blame or kind of shame people for not knowing how to support, because that's really what it is. We don't know what we don't know, right? So if I don't have any experience with loss, if I personally haven't lost anyone immediately, I may not know some of the ways that perhaps I can support someone that is experiencing that tragedy, right? So I may not know what to say, I may not know what to do, I may not want to bring up the actual events because I don't want to make you feel worse, or I may want to take away that pain, so I may try to overly talk, to overly compensate perhaps for what you are experiencing, and doing so, I may be putting my foot in my mouth, right? So there are a variety of things as to why people may take a step back, and it's okay, because aside from death, relationships, not all relationships are meant to last a lifetime. And sometimes we become so ingrained and so attached to people that the thought of them not being in our lives seems impossible to fathom or think of, where things are constantly changing. People may drift apart, people may come together. But again, it's learning how to appreciate people for the time that they are in your life, whether that's 5 minutes, 5 years, 5 centuries, whatever it is. It's learning to appreciate what that person was able to give you in that period of time, whether you consider it short or long. So again, when someone is grieving, it really depends how they are manifesting or expressing their grief, right? So if, let's say, this person is perhaps able to, and at the mental state to talk about their grief, to reach out for support, to rely on those around them for support, that may be something that may open the door to their social system to be able to continue connecting with them. But also that may also have another kind of effect where people may not want to be around them as much, just because they themselves feel so bad that the person experienced this loss, that they don't know now how to react or act around them. So it's like, do I ask them about their loved one? Do I not? Do I act like this never happened? Do I act all chipper and happy? Should I laugh around them? Should I be crying with them? So these are some of the questions that perhaps people in your life may ask themselves. And again, when we don't know what to do, we tend to retreat, right? And it's natural to take it personally. It's natural to feel abandoned. It's natural to feel rejected in a time of need. People may become closer to you, so they feel like supporting you through your grief helps them to see like a different side of you. And also for the grieving person, it helps you to see a different side to that person, to see that they're there for you unconditionally, and therefore the relationship is strengthened, right? And you may come across people in your life that perhaps do the opposite, where your grief, the death, and everything else that has happened in your life after losing your loved one may be a little too scary for them. And they may not know how to support you, and therefore they may just fade away from your life. I know that it is very difficult to remain objective, especially when you are in dire pain, especially when you've experienced loss, especially when you don't know how life is supposed to look like now that your loved one is no longer here. And it's, again, natural to take things personally. I know that when I lost my mother, I took a lot of things personally, and I felt like it was the world attacking me, even though I would tell my family and my friends like, oh, I don't want to see anyone, I don't want to be with anyone right now. It got lonely when I didn't get text messages or phone calls to check in on me, right? So on those days I really felt alone, and I felt like no one was there to see my grief, right? Because as I've mentioned before, all we really want as a grieving person is for someone, for anyone, to be a witness to our pain, not to take it away, because that's oftentimes what comes in the mix and kind of brings up conflict in our relationships with our grief, right? Is the fact that people feel the need that they have to fix whatever is broken or damaged, that they have to provide you with solutions, that they have to take away your pain, where it's like when death happens, there is no reversing it, right? There is no taking away the pain. There is no solution. All you can really do is be there physically for the person and have that conversation, because communication is key in anything in life, including your grief experience. And I know that initially you may not have the words, and initially you may be too overwhelmed with emotion, but for people that you truly care about, that you truly love, that you really want for them to continue in your life at some point down the line, it may be okay, like something to consider or something to think about, to have that conversation as far as what is going on in your head. If you don't know what's going on in your head or how to proceed, then say that. Sometimes we complicate our lives by saying, well, how would I phrase this, or how would I tell this person this, by just saying it, however it's in your heart, in your mind, just say it. Listen, I am struggling. I'm having a hard time. My life doesn't feel the same, doesn't look the same. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I need. And that way it can kind of open that line of communication with whoever's in your life, to understand, like, listen, this is not personally. If I'm not talking to you, it's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's because right now I feel like I can't talk to you or anyone. It's not us, it's not them, it's simply what's going on and the inability or not knowing of how to deal with the situation. To me, communication has taught me that it may feel uncomfortable initially to have these conversations and to be vulnerable enough, but again, they're able to see you in a different light and you're able to see them in a different light. So again, I hope you have found this helpful, informative. There is no one cookie cutter answer or solution to this. Unfortunately, there are just going to be times that even with communication, people will become distant just because you start having different perceptions of life. So death for me brought me a lot of insight about myself, about my life, and how I want to continue living, right? So that may not necessarily coincide with my previous relationships that I had as far as friends or even family. Like, we may just see things differently, we may appreciate things differently, and it's okay to walk away from each other with love. You don't have to walk away from people's lives with hate, with anger, with frustration, or anything, because again, people are not always meant to be in your life forever. Nothing is forever. We are not forever. So why put the strain on relationships to put them on a pedestal of you have to last forever, right? However you experience your grief, there is no right or wrong way. There is simply your way. And I ask you to be kind to yourself, to be loving to yourself, to be patient with yourself, because those are the most difficult things to do with yourself when you are grieving the loss of a loved one. This is going to take time after time after time, and there's no end date of when your grief experience will end. It's simply learning how to cope, learning how to process and live without your loved one and making a new life, right? So remember to subscribe to my channel and also turn on the notifications, as well as follow me on Instagram at lifeafterloss0322. For any questions or comments, feel free to send me an email, and also comments below. I want to hear what you think as far as the secondary losses, whether it's today's video or the previous videos. All right, so until the next.